My family has owned this land for over 100 years. It just owned it, lived on it, worked it, protected it. Every fence line, every tree, every stretch of open ground, all of it carries historic kind you do not see at first glance, but is there built into the soil, passed down without noise. When the HOA started building next to my ranchi, did not pay much attention. People come and go, developments results get written, that does not change what already exists, or at least it should note. At first they stayed on their side, clean roads, uniform houses, perfect lines of everything, controlled every planet. But over time that line started to blur it visibly. At first but legally quietly began talking about excess, about shared benefit, about how land should be used for the greater good, kind of language that sounds reasonable until you realize what it actually means. Then one morning he saw trucks net near the boundary, but across it equipment rolling into my land, workers unloading material, structures being set in rows, long rows of solar panels spreading across my ranch like it had already been approved, like it had already been decided. Walked out, watched from a distance, shouting, no confrontation, bays reacting to early gives the wrong kind of advantage. Saw me off course they did, but they did not stop. Confidence arranged paperwork somewhere made this acceptable. Later that Davey handed me documents playing their position, easements, access rights, technical language, all of it carefully presented, all of it designed to sound final. But I had seen something like that before, not recently, not in modern contracts, but in something old or something most people would never think to check. So I did not argue it, not push backy, let them continue day after day. Grid expanded, panels aligned perfectly, wires connected, structures reinforced until the project was nearly complete. The entire time I said nothing because I already knew this was not going to end the way they expected. Inside the old ranch house there is a room most people ignore, dusty shelves, old boxes, records that go back generations, not digital, not convenient, but real. And in those records there was something specific, a clause written long before any HOA existed, long before solar panels were even imagined, a condition tied to land use, a condition tied to unauthorized development, and most importantly a condition tied to consequence. It was not obvious, not something you notice unless you were looking for it, but once you see it you understand everything. So I waited, let them finish, let them invest, let them believe it was secure. Then came their big momenta, public event celebrations about progress, about sustainability and community expansion. They stood there proud, certain they had done something permanent. That is when I showed up, not early, not later, right on time, walked in quietly, documents in hand, waited until they finished speaking, until the attention settled, and then I stepped forward, placed the papers down, not dramatically, just clearly, and I began to explain. Oh, raised voice, no emotion, just facts, line by line, clause by clause, explaining what that land agreement actually said, what it meant, and what happens when it is violated. At first they did not understand, then confusion set in, then realization based. The clause was simple. If any external entity developed infrastructure on that land without full documented consent from the landowner, they did not just lose access, they forfeited the development itself. Everything built, everything installed, varying connected to that project become part of the land, which meant it became the silence that followed was different, net uncertain, tiny doubt, final base. There was no argumento, interpretatiano way around if he had completed the project without verifying the one thing that mattered, by doing that they triggered something written 100 years ago, something designed for exactly this kind of situation. Their confidence disappeared right there in front of everyone. Same people who had acted like they were expanding realized they had just transferred everything, the panels, the grid, the entire system. No longer their legal teams got involved. Of course they did, but the clause held clear, documented, enforceable. Within days of everything shifted, control change, access changed, ownership changed, the built ID owned item. I never had to raise my voice and never had to stop them back, as sometimes the strongest move is letting someone finish their mistake. Cows, in the end they did not just cross onto my land, they activated something my family put in place 100 years ago, and once that happened, there was no undoing it. If you enjoyed this story, hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you are watching from.